Hi, welcome to Scrap FX and Moxie Mojo. You're here with Paula. I'm busy doing some crafting because there's not a lot else that we can do at the moment. And I am working on a couple of journals using some kits from Susan Taylor Brown. This is from the Kiss Kiss kit that she's got. And I have printed some of the photos in colour, and so they've come out in sort of the sepia tones, and then I've also printed some of them in black and white, just because I wanted to see the comparison between the two colourways. So I'm doing one album with some sepia photos from the kit and one album with some black and white. So this one has been cropped down from this. And one thing I noticed is, well, partly I'm cropping them for two reasons. One, because I'm putting them into some small journals that have only got pages. I think one's like 6x4 pages. So this here is too big for the page. And the other is because of the theme I'm doing for the journals, I want to really focus on the intimacy of the photo rather than the whole shot. So I'm cropping them down and then matting them on black cardstock. And that is making quite a difference to them because I really want them to stand up off the page so that they're almost quite graphic in the way they look. So I just thought it'd be interesting to show you how I decide what it is that I'm going to crop. And I've got a couple of ways of doing that. Most of it is just by eyeballing, but where I'm not sure how much I want to crop, I'll come back to that one. Like for instance, this one here, how did I decide to crop it down to this? The easiest way I have found is to use something to block out the page or the photo. So here I've just got 4 pieces of scrap black cardstock. So what I'm doing is just putting it down on my table and putting the cardstock in various places to say, well, how do I focus in? So for instance, this photo here, I cropped off just a little bit so that it was directly to his hair. And then I can judge, well, do I keep on the whole side or do I trim it down a little bit? So we'll try trimming it down a little bit. That's focusing some more. Then do I crop on this side? And again I decided that yes, I would crop to her headset there. And again you can sort of slide them off, the pieces off, and say, well yes, how much do I want on there? And then, and if I just move this up because I've got it sort of focused quite closely, is how much of the bottom of this photo do I want? And so I can slide up. Do I want to crop to her elbow? So that looks quite nice, but to really make it quite intense and focused on them, I cropped to just under the bottom of his hand. Even bring that one in a little bit closer. So that's where I decided to crop. So again, I can slide these out, and that to me, I just need to bring that in a little bit more intensely to his fingers. Don't need that blank space above his head. So we can put that one back. Do I want some out the side? I don't need to see his arm. It doesn't bring anything to the intensity of the photo. And again, yep, just sliding that up really focuses on the emotion there of the kiss. So I've worked out roughly where I'm going to crop. So then I will pull up my cutting board and actually crop the picture. So I'll put those aside for now. I will zoom you out a bit. Hopefully I can take it the right way. There we go. bring up my cutting board. Now I'm lining it up with the bottom of here so that I can get where it is, and I know exactly, and because I've hand cut these out just using scissors, the other reason is for cropping is I want to make sure that I've got exactly straight lines. So I know it was top of his head, so that's essentially, that's deciding and sorting out where my straight line is. Now this one I know was aligned with her headscarf, so I can slide that up there. I've got a straight line there again, and this was just underneath his hand, so we'll take that one to there. And then like larger bits like this I can then put aside and reuse for something else, maybe cut flowers out of them, because all I'm wanting is just sort of patterned in the background. And there, so now I've focused that for the album that I want. And what I'm going to do is I will adhere this onto some black cardstock and give it just a very small frame around it. So for instance, just on this, because I need to get some bigger cardstock, is again working out how big I want that frame for the matting. I mean, this to me looks too big. Just closing it down. Actually, I should zoom this in so you can see a bit better. That way there. So we've got, so just zooming in so you can see how I'm deciding on the frame. So I mean, my normal frames are probably about 1/4 of an inch, and that to me just looks too big for what I want. So I will slide this in just to get an idea. That's looking better, but I'm actually doing them at about that. So I mean, metrics, it's probably about 2 millimeters, if that, probably 1/8 of an inch, and that's just enough to emphasize the photo so that it stands off the page compared to that. So let me get some cardstock and I'll show you what the matted photo looks like. So what I am using is black board, 210 grams or whatever it is, GSM. I picked this up at Warehouse Stationery here in New Zealand. I'm sure you can find an equivalent wherever you are. If you don't have black cardstock, you can always paint cardstock with black gesso or black acrylic paint, or just use whatever you've got. So I'm just using just grabbed a full sheet here, so I'm going to adhere both this photo and also the sepia one, and I've cropped them slightly differently, but that doesn't matter. And I will adhere them in place. Now I'm just using a paper glue that I know won't warp the paper, that just is suited for what I want. So that's from Crafter's Choice Craft Glue from Spotlight here in New Zealand. It's also an Australian company, and I found this to be one of the best glues for not warping paper. So let me shift that out of the way, because I've got everything very close up at the moment so you can see what I'm doing, because it's quite detailed. And these photos I've actually cropped quite small, probably smaller than what I would normally use, but that's because the albums themselves are small. So break that, bring our cardboard back in, and this one I'm lining up with the bottom of the page, and so you can see how small I'm doing this mat. So there we go, so barely just a couple of millimeters on each side. Just eyeballing it, make sure they're even. And if it's not 100% even, it's not the end of the world. And then once again I'll pull up my trimmer. I've got to learn how to focus this. I've got to do it manually. I haven't got a remote for my video camera. And then I'm going to trim this, and I'm using my eyeball on the wire on this Fiskars cutter to just work out where I want to, what line I want to cut on. So that's about alright, and then just cut straight through. So that gives me that side there, that's pretty good. And then we'll bring it back just a smidgen bigger, because I know it seems to cut smaller than what it looks. So there we go, so that's matted. And that already looks 100% better than without the matte, even though it's a different colour. Hang on, if I put it on the wall like that, you can see the black just makes that photo lift a lot more than what it does without. So we'll do the same thing with that sepia version of the photo. So put that to one side and use the same card. Yep, so we'll trim that there. Now the only thing I have found with this glue, and it's like most glues, is that it tends to run quite a bit, so I'm just making sure I don't put the glue too close to the edge, because when you do, and particularly with black cardstock, I found that if it runs out onto the edge beyond the photo, it leaves a mark on the cardstock. And you can try and rub that off, but then you end up with marks, so it's best to try and just not go too close to the edge. So again, eyeballing it, yep, that looks straight. Happy with that. So now I'll just trim off the excess again. So I tend to do this side first, and then that leaves me a bigger patch here for using on something else. So there we go, so that's the two of them done. 1 and 2. So they both look really good with the black cardstock borders. So I have done some already, and these are some pretty small photos. So, and this is after cropping some of them. I've still got some larger photos to do. So that's in the black and white, and then in the sepia tones. I've done a few more of those because I've just started on the black and white. So, oh, now this one here, this photo has got quite a lot of black around the border, so when I put it directly onto the black cardstock, it blended in and you couldn't actually see the photo except for where the lady's white dress was. So I actually matted that on white cardstock first, and I just used some leftover scraps of basil white and then put it on the black, and that allowed it to stand out just that much more. And I also did that for this one here, again because it had quite a dark border all the way around, and it was just, you were losing the photo on the black. So again, put it on white cardstock, then black, and that really makes it pop.